we had a hard life. We didn't have much income in the early days of the 30s at all, and my father ended up getting a surveying job when World War II started. He went to Escanaba, Michigan, and was doing civil engineering up there for some, I think, some docks or ore docks or something they were putting in up there. And he went up to Superior also and did some of the same thing. But it was a tough life. But we all survived, and I think we're probably the better for it.
Your mother wrote a book
Yes.
on the history of
Yes.
Lake Namekagon, or the...
Well, she calls it Namekagon Memories. It goes way back in history to when her parents immigrated here from Sweden in the 1880s. And all the way to about 1975. She published her book in 1975. And she passed away a few years after that. She was 83 years old, I believe, when she passed away. She published this book, and my sister has since reprinted it because it ran out. All the copies she had made had been sold. It's just a small pamphlet, but there's a lot of history.
Is there any stories that your mother told you that really stand out in your mind as being really unique about the area, or something you remember?
Yeah, one in particular I remember. She talked about floating logs across the lake to the Namekagon River, that big log rafts that were pulled by a steamship that somebody had brought to the lake. The Lake Namekagon is a pretty good sized lake, and they pulled these rafts of logs over there, and one time that steamship hit a pile of rocks someplace and sank, and then it burned, and that was the end of the steamship. But the loggers would break up the rafts when they got to the river and send the logs down the river by themselves, and then I suppose at the river bends and wherever they got hung up, somebody had to be there to move them apart and send them down the road. But she used to talk about that a lot, and well, there's so many things that she used to tell us about. We had 5 uncles and several aunts, and all the uncles and probably a dozen cousins all were deer hunters. And we would go out in a big party to hunt deer and drive. We used to drive whole big areas of land, have a bunch of standers and 2 or 3 drivers coming through and making noise to chase the deer, and that was our way of life every fall.
So how many days were there?
In those days, we did not have as many deer as we do today.
Really? Why is that?
Well, I think 2 reasons. I think there were a lot more bear and there were a lot more wolves in those days. You know, bears are tough on little fawns.
Yeah.
They really massacre a lot of fawns.
Seems to be a resurgence of bears.
Right now there certainly is. You bet. Yeah. And of course we got a resurgence of wolves too. The wolf population is really ballooned, and I have an idea that the DNR is going to have to do something if the federal government will let them do something, because the wolves are starting to kill a lot of hunters' dogs and so on too.
Life in northern Wisconsin essentially the same as it always has, or is it drastically changed?
Well, there are a lot of things that have drastically changed. Our dependence on government is greatly increased. That is, the people that want to depend on the government, and the taxation that we're faced with certainly is a major factor. But of course that has to be done so that the government can keep doing what they want to do. You know, they've got a lot of people that aren't producers, and they still have to help them subsist. And
so would you say most people of your youth, they were very independent, they didn't really I mean, government wasn't really involved in their life.
Yeah.
I don't want to put words in your mouth, but
There weren't any laggers that I knew of. Everybody worked hard for a living and to accomplish something and put food on the table and raise families and do the right thing. I see a trend today in this country, not so much here in Wisconsin so much, or at least in northern Wisconsin, but I see a trend toward a lot of people feeling that the government owes them a living. And whether they produce anything or not, they're takers. And I resent that, quite frankly.
A friend of mine gave me a booklet from a land company selling land in Sawyer County, and the title of the book is Happy Land. It describes a near paradise with perfect soil for growing anything you want. It did not mention anything about rocks. Clear your land, sell the trees for big bucks, and plant your crops between the stumps. Ask any farmer how that would work. Pristine rivers where the fish practically jumped in your boat. Who could resist that? Okay, now back to my mother's word, the farm. With all the talk about the advantages of living on a farm, my father sold our house on Taylor Avenue in St. Paul and bought a small farm near Phipps, Wisconsin. A beautiful setting beside the Namekagon River. Birch trees in the yard, very pretty. There was a barn and a very small house, large enough for the bachelor who had lived there, but not for a family with 5 kids and 6 later when Joan was born. The river was beginning to break up, but we walked across. On her way home, Mother was crossing the river when she fell through. Ray happened to be home. He grabbed a plank, crawled out, pushing the plank ahead of him. He got Mother out. The day before she fell through, a team of horses pulled a load of logs across that very spot. Well, that was the final straw. Mother said she would not live up there any longer. So in June of that year, we moved back to St. Paul, drove down in the Model T. Mother, 6 kids, 12 dozen eggs in an egg crate, and suitcases on the running board on a very hot day. We had lived in Wisconsin 5.5 years.
90 men were waiting for it to start. There will be 11 million logs to drive out of the Chimpanzee Brook, required in the neighborhood of 100 drivers. The stream is only 10 miles in length, but it will take 3 to 4 weeks as the stream is small and 5 dams have to be sluiced through. So what they would do is release from the water from one dam to take it to the next dam to get the logs through those individual stretches. We have 4 Germans, 5 Swedes, 3 Norwegians, 3 Frenchmen, 5 Indians, and the others are from Maine or Ireland. 60 are Irish. When we get to the Namekagon and the weather becomes warm, I intend to drive, thinking it will make me stronger and healthier. But evidently in April it was a little too cold. The drowned man's tool was considered jinxed by the other drivers and none would pick it up. And so the pipe holes or PVs often just floated downriver unless the foreman rescued it and later issued it to some newcomer who did not know its history. Or it was saved for next year's drive when no one could tell which were the jinxed poles. So the question is, these poles that we have found in the river today that are in our museum collections, are they actually tools from drowned men, or were they ones that were just slipped out of someone's hand and wound up in the river's bottom? But today it still is occasionally found, some of these tools in various states of condition in the river.